and basically whatever the hell I want. Hello everybody, and welcome to Gene's Reviews in my car. Okay, I'm doing one that I haven't done in a long time from this channel. This is from Most Amazing Top 10. We're going to do disturbing books that drive people insane after reading. So let's check it out.
Some books have a way of sticking with you, but these do more. They're said to leave scars. They haunt you. From Chuck Palahniuk's Guts to the depraved horrors of the 120 Days of Sodom, these stories go beyond shocking. These are disturbing books that drive people insane.
That's good enough reason right there for me to never want to read any of them.
Guts. Guts is a short story by Chuck Palahniuk, an American author most famous for Fight Club. But oh boy, this short story, there are actually 3 stories in it, all having to do with mishaps while pleasuring oneself, and each getting progressively more gruesome before the final story, where a guy places his rear end on the intake valve at the bottom of his home swimming pool, and I'll just say stuff from his insides gets tangled up in there, and being that he's now stuck at the bottom of the pool, he's gotta break free, or rather chew free. It makes me squirm just describing it, and I am describing it in the most YouTube guideline friendly way possible. People have talked about how they've retched while reading this story, even fainting. I remember reading this short way back in the 9th grade. A girl a couple years older than me told me to read it. She was an interesting person, to say the least.
Sounds like it.
The story always stuck with me. Wish it wouldn't. The 120 Days
I have
of Sodom.
no reason
to some, this
to
story
read
needs
that.
no introduction. To others,
And I've heard of
my
this.
gosh, you're innocent. Please, just stay that way. Now, most people are familiar with the film adaptation,
That's
but
what
it
I've heard of.
changes some things from the book. Still just
No
as
desire
sick,
to
though.
see it, though.
Actually, I don't even think it is as sick. The book is way worse. The novel was written by French writer Marquis de Sade in 1785, while he was imprisoned. It wasn't published until 1904, when the manuscript was discovered. Now, how in the hell do I describe this book? The plot follows 4 very rich and very awful men who retreat to a remote castle with a group of kidnapped individuals, and then they embark on, I'll just call it, an extremely disturbing study of human depravity. The book is divided into 4 sections, each one more deranged than the last, and it starts out worse than you're thinking. Let's just say this book is often described as unreadable, and that the word sadism actually originates from this writer's name, Marquis de Sade. So if that doesn't give you a clue as to how disturbing this story is, I don't know what will. Well, nobody said I couldn't cover any manga on the list. Still counts as books to me, and if you want the king of horror manga, look no further than Junji Ito, often referred to as the Stephen King of manga and anime. The stuff this guy comes up with is just insane. I don't know how he does it. His stories are strange, surreal, some have this dark humor to them, but almost all of them hit you on this deep, visceral level. He has too many creepy tales to cover in this one video, but this one's pretty messed up. Layers of Fear. This short story was released as a one-shot in 2017. It was also featured in the anthology anime series Junji Ito Maniac. The story here is that there's 2 girls who live with their overbearing mother. One day, the 3 of them get into a car accident, and the younger daughter, Rami, has her face severely damaged. When they bring her to the hospital, though, the doctor makes a horrifying discovery. After performing an x-ray of her head to check for injuries, they realize that Rami is made entirely of skin. It's just layer upon layer, similar to a tree. The new layers just continue to grow over the old ones. She has no brain, no bones, and sure enough, where she lost half her face in the accident, it reveals this younger version underneath. Well, this is already awful, but to make matters worse, Rami's mother wants her daughter to be young again. You could see where this is going. I won't give the ending away, but there's some peeling involved. And here's another creepy one, The Den of the Sleep Demon. Featured in the 10th volume of the Horror World of Junji Ito collection, we start off this story with an author named Yuji, who's sitting at a restaurant with his friend Mari. She tells him that he looks haggard, and Yuji reveals that, well, he hasn't slept in 3 days because there's an entity, another version of himself, in his dreams that's trying to break out into the real world. Every time he's tried to fall asleep, this entity has tried pulling Yuji into the dream world in order to replace him in the waking world. So Yuji's been keeping himself awake in order to ward it off. Yuji asks Mari to watch him sleep, and if anything funny happens, to wake him up immediately. Definitely some heavy Nightmare on Elm Street vibes going on here, which I absolutely love. American Psycho is one of the most infamous movies ever made. We all know it. But the book it's based on by Bret Easton Ellis is equally as controversial. So controversial that it was banned in several countries and sold shrink-wrapped in others. Published in 1991, the book follows Patrick Bateman, a wealthy Wall Street investment banker in the late 80s, who also happens to be a sadistic serial killer. The novel takes you directly inside Bateman's head, and that's where the real horror lies. First glance, Bateman seems like just any other shallow, material-obsessed yuppie. Actually, nowadays,
Christian Bale played that role really well.
Red pill self-help gurus you see online, which is concerning. But Bateman spends his days analyzing business cards, obsessing over his skincare routine, and giving long-winded monologues about 80s pop music. But as the story progresses, his mask starts to slip, revealing the other side of his life. Graphic, brutal killings that he describes in sickening detail. As Bateman's mental state unravels, you start questioning whether everything he's describing is actually happening or if he's completely lost in his own mind. When it was first released, American Psycho caused a lot of outrage. Some critics just called it worthless garbage. Others defended it as a dark satire of consumer culture. Either way, it did cement its place as one of the most disturbing books ever written. The Grand Grimoire is often called the most dangerous book in the world because, according to legend, it doesn't just describe dark magic, it contains it. Supposedly written in the 16th century by someone possessed by the devil, this grimoire is said to hold instructions on how to summon demons, make pacts with them, and even control Lucifer himself. The book is split into sections, with the most infamous part being the Sanctum Regnum, which details a ritual for summoning Satan's right-hand man. The instructions are detailed, of course, involving sacrifice and a whole lot of things that would make a priest faint on sight. Now, unlike some grimoires that are more about herbal remedies and star magic nonsense, the Grand Grimoire is just packed full of demons. Some versions supposedly contain passages so dangerous that even the Vatican has a copy locked away in its archives, just to keep it out of the wrong hands. Now, whether or not that's true, the book does have quite a reputation. May not be as freaky to us today, but just imagining yourself back in the day reading something like this or hearing about it.
I wouldn't want to even today.
Modern versions of the Grand Grimoire do exist, but similar to the Necronomicon, they're not really the real thing. Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. Published in 1996, this is a horror novel that dives deep into the minds of two serial killers whose paths cross in New Orleans. And let's just say, if you thought Silence of the Lambs was intense, this one cranks things up way past that. The story follows Andrew Compton, a British serial killer who fakes his own death to escape prison. And then there's Jay Barron, a charismatic but equally dangerous predator living in the French Quarter. He's based on Jeffrey Dahmer. That's all you need to know about him. When these two meet, it's like a match made in the worst possible version of heaven. They bond over their shared interests, which involve pushing their victims to their absolute limits and eating them. And when an innocent young man named Tran gets involved with the two, things get incredibly dark. What makes Exquisite Corpse so disturbing isn't just the graphic content, which is extremely graphic, but how deeply it gets inside the heads of its characters. You're not just reading about their actions, you're seeing the world through their perspectives, and their perspectives you just don't want to see. It really sticks with the reader.
Yeah,
it's
that
uncomfortable feeling of being trapped in their thoughts, like you're way too close to something you shouldn't be understanding. Suffice to say, the book was controversial when it was released. Some called it an extreme horror masterpiece, others said it was just too much even for the genre. Either way, though, it has a cult following.
I love horror movies, but that would be too much for me.
Next is a book that the Irish Times called a work of unparalleled depravity, The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. Ian Banks was a Scottish author who's mostly known for writing science fiction, but The Wasp Factory is what really kicked off his career, and it is not science fiction, let me me tell you. Side note, if you're an animal lover, you'll probably want to stay away from this one. Published in 1984, it's a psychological horror novel that dives deep into the disturbed mind of its protagonist, Frank Caldham, a teenage boy living in an isolated Scottish island. From the start, Frank makes it clear that he's not like the other kids. He has a history of violence, ritualistic, calculated acts that he fully believes have meaning, and he's never been the same since his dangly bits were bitten off by a dog. The title comes from one of Frank's personal inventions. He's built a contraption called the Wasp Factory, where he places live wasps and then watches as they meet different fates, each one in his mind predicting the future. Throughout the book, he recounts past events, including the deaths of 3 people he was responsible for, all before he even hit his teenage years. I won't give the ending away because yikes, but this is not a book for the faint of heart. When it was first published, critics were horrified, but some
I don't know
also
where these
saw it as a
authors come up with
disturbing
these
but
ideas.
brilliant
This is
piece
insane
of fiction.
stuff.
Either way, it leaves an impact. If you want a story that perfectly encapsulates the dread of descending into madness, The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman is well worth a read. When I read the ending, I actually said out loud, whoa. This one just gets into your bones the way any good psychological horror should. It's a short story that was published in the New England magazine in 1892. It's told in the form of a diary written by a woman who is suffering from what seems to be postpartum depression. Her husband, a physician, insists that she be confined in a secluded room in a house that they've rented for the summer. The room where she stays has this old, ugly yellow wallpaper, which she finds incredibly off-putting. Now, at first she focuses on how irritating the pattern is, but as the story progresses, she starts getting more and more fixated on it. She becomes obsessed with its strange, disturbing design and is then convinced that there's something alive in it. A woman trapped inside the wallpaper, creeping along.
That's
kind of
interesting, actually. That would make a great
Spoiler
horror
warning
movie.
here. But in the end, the husband enters the room to find his wife on all fours, circling the room up against the wall, having essentially become the woman in the wallpaper. The story is often interpreted as a critique of how women were treated in the late 19th century, particularly when it came to mental health. It's this really chilling look at the impact of isolation and how neglecting mental health can push someone to the absolute edge.
Yeah.
The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum is widely regarded as one of the most disturbing horror novels ever written, mainly because it's inspired by
Made a movie
real
about
case.
that.
The book follows a boy named David who lives in this quiet suburban neighborhood in the 1950s. He befriends 2 sisters, Meg and Susan, who move in with their aunt Ruth. Now, Ruth has 3 sons. Ruth is a pretty nasty parent from the start, and the apples don't fall far from the tree, but things
terrible.
only get worse. Ruth slowly begins to mistreat Meg, and things escalate in ways that are difficult to read and describe. She manipulates her sons and the neighborhood youngsters into participating, turning the sisters' new home into an absolute hellhole. The story is told from David's perspective. He's both a witness and a bystander. He's caught between his conscience and the pressure of the group. And many readers have said this is just one of the hardest books they've ever read, with some even putting it down before finishing, and I can't blame them. While I haven't read it myself, I did read the plot synopsis, and eesh. I don't know what government list I'm gonna get put on Googling all these books, but I kind of feel like Nicolas Cage in 8mm right now. Probably 2 people are gonna get that reference. Now we need to talk about
Good
Kevin.
movie.
That's the title of the book, by Lionel Shriver. It's a pretty chilling novel told through letters written by Eva, the mother of Kevin, a boy who commits a horrific act of violence at his school. The story unfolds as Eva reflects on her troubled relationship with Kevin from his early childhood to the lead up to the event. She grapples with the guilt of being Kevin's mother, questioning whether his violent tendencies were a result of her parenting or if he was just bad from the beginning, a bad seed. It's a very unsettling read, and the film adaptation is pretty gut-wrenching too. Amazing performance by Tilda Swinton, as if she's ever churned out a bad one. Anyway, with all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you.
Yeah, I'm not much of a reader, but something like that, like these books, I really have no desire in ever reading any of them. That last one they showed, I think it's called We Need to Talk About Kevin, or Let's Talk About Kevin, or something like that. They made a movie about it. I've been curious to watch that, but I haven't done so. Yeah, just I mean, if they tell you it's going to drive you insane, why would you even want to read it? Or do you not believe it? I guess that's because it is so far-fetched that reading a book would drive you insane. But I'd rather just err on the safe side. Stay away from them. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now it's time for a joke. I have a dog that's so smart, I asked her what 2 minus 2 is. She said nothing.